Alright, having some connection issues here right at the first, but welcome back to our live videos. We're going to get back into studying the biology textbook. Our congratulations go out to Miss Gilhausen. She scored almost twice as much as either of the other two candidates running for her position. Unfortunately, she didn't get the requirement to win outright, so she'll be doing a runoff. So we still need to be paying attention to the election. One of the things that this election has really highlighted is the power of apathy and what happens. We only had, I think it was something like a 27% voter turnout. I understand why. We're talking primaries here, not the big election, and of course we're in an off year. There's no presidential election this year coming up, but folks need to really get out and vote. Clay County is touted as a more conservative, more limited government style county, but we didn't show that. We didn't show that in this election at all. And not only did they pass the tax measure, but they're already talking about a new tax to follow right on the and this is the thing. This is and it ties right into kind of what we're looking at here with the textbook. Progressives, people that are not in favor of freedom to teach what is right in the classroom, freedom to teach what the teacher knows to be true in the classroom, freedom for the kids to think critically. The people who are antagonistic to that are relentless. They just keep coming. They're tireless. There's just no end to the way that they think in terms of getting more and more and more. They just grasp and they grasp, and every inch that is given up, whether through apathy or through our own failings or whatever leads us to give ground to them, they grab it. And so here we are in this position that Clay County's in because of that. And I wish Ashley all the best, and we'll continue to support her. But folks, this is a wake-up call. You've got to get out there and you got to vote and you've got to learn and you've got to be prepared for this. You're going to find yourself under all kinds of rules one day, and you're like, where are these coming from? So anyway, we're on page 291 in the new textbook, and this is a continuation of the introduction through Charles Darwin himself, the things that he discovered on his voyage on the Beagle. And it's going to be kind of brief, just a couple of real quick points to make, and one kind of glaring contradiction in the textbook itself. So it's pointed, but we'll try to get through this real quick. At the top of the page, it shows the picture of two tortoises, the Galapagos tortoise. I'll try to pronounce this correctly. Geochelone elephantopus, I guess, genus and species, and it's a picture of two very different looking tortoises, but they're both of the same species. One is very domed. Let's see if I can turn this around here real quick, so that you guys can see what I'm talking about while I'm talking about it. There we go. So you can see there's two different tortoises. One of them on the left there has a very domed shell, and the other one has a very high-backed shell. But these are the same species. And the point that's made here is that these guys are of the same species, but they look so different. And this must be evolution at play. And I kind of have to laugh because they're trying to say that this is the way that evolution works. And of course, we know we're talking about this rocks to man, the change from one organism into another. And I think about all the dog breeds that are out there, and there's just an amazing amount of dog breeds, and they're all the same species. They can all interbreed. There's nothing said about these two tortoises being able to breed or not breed. and they are obviously the same kind of creature, even though they look different. But you know what? I look different from Shaquille O'Neal. He's very tall, very muscular, very athletic, obviously darker skin, and I'm none of those things. I'm not very tall. I'm a big dude, but I'm not all that athletic anymore. And so there's major differences, but we're the same species. There's no significant difference between us as human beings. And so the point that they're making isn't made by the picture. It isn't made by the evidence that Darwin was presented with. He saw two tortoises or multiple tortoises, and they were all the same species, and okay, great. They were all the same species. And so suddenly you conclude that all life came from a single cell millions of years ago. That doesn't follow. And then the next thing that they talk about here, it is down at the bottom of the page. Well, not the very bottom. It was kind of in the middle of the page. It says that Darwin observed fossil and geological evidence supporting an ancient Earth. Now, this is one of those pillars. This idea of the geological column and the geological evidence and stuff. And the book reads, on his voyage. Here, let me turn this around. You can kind of read along while I'm reading it too. It says, on his voyage, Darwin found fossil evidence of species changing over time. In Argentina, he found fossils of huge animals such as Glyptodon, a giant armadillo. The fact that these fossils looked like living species suggested that modern animals might have some relationship to fossil forms. These fossils suggested that in order for such changes to occur, Earth must be much more than 6,000 years old. Well, okay, so he found a giant armadillo-like creature, and it looked like some other creatures here on Earth, even though the Glyptodon itself is no longer about. Why does that suggest, what in that particular fossil, looking at that fossil, what demands anything about the age of the Earth? The dodo died off in the 1800s, and we can find fossils of even the dodos. Why would that suggest that the Earth is millions of years old? There's nothing in that, is what I'm saying. There's no reason to look at the fossil of anything, and that fossil demanding suddenly something about the age of the Earth or how much time has passed since it's died, just looking at it. Okay, there's got to be more here, but the book just asserts it. The book just says, hey, he found a giant armadillo, the Glyptodon fossil, and suddenly it occurred to him, hey, millions of years. That doesn't follow. And obviously we know from the previous page that he was a big reader of Lyell's ideas on geology and stuff. But, we have to understand that biology and geology and all of these other things, they have to draw them all together. But that's their weakness. That's the biggest weakness of macroevolution, is when you draw these things together and you start bringing physics into this and you start bringing chemistry into this and you start showing the bigger picture of all of science together, not just biology by itself, which they must do, then you start pulling out all of the threads. And when you say, well, what does biology have to do with physics? Well, here they're talking about other sciences. And this is where evolution falls apart. And that brings me to the next point. It says, during his voyage, Darwin also found fossil shells of marine organisms high up in the Andes Mountains. Darwin later experienced an earthquake during his voyage and saw firsthand the result. Land that had been underwater was moved above sea level. This experience explained what he saw in the Andes. Darwin's observations on his voyage supported Lyell's theory that daily geological processes can add up to great change over a long period of time. I'm laughing at this one because it's exactly the opposite of what we're told it means. So there are fossils found up in the tops of mountains, and how they got there is very disputable, but even this passage right here gives us an idea of how that might have happened, um, in terms of the speed that it might have happened. Uh, Darwin sees an earthquake, he experiences an earthquake, and suddenly land that was under the water is rapidly, he's observing it, above water. And so what we see here is some kind of um, major geological event happened very quickly and changed the geological landscape before his eyes. And so to say that, that oh, these fossils that we find of marine life up in the mountains indicates millions and millions of years. Well, you know what? It could also indicate that there was a really big flood a long time ago that really messed up the surface of the earth and very rapidly pushed marine life up into these mountains. And the book is just like saying it. I don't even have to say it because the book is saying it. And yet suddenly we're supposed to conclude the earth is millions of years old and not 6,000. Well, there's nothing that leads us to believe that. They're just asserting it. They're just saying it because it's a belief system. It's literally religious dogma, because nothing they have presented up to this point has actually led us to the conclusion, therefore evolution is true, therefore the earth is millions of years old. They don't have a logical argument. They don't have any premises that demand the conclusion, so that it's not a valid argument, and they don't have any premises that relate directly to what they're trying to say that are true premises. And so it's not a true argument. And so nothing they have in this textbook demands the conclusion that they're demanding. It's just a flat out statement of faith. And a lot of people talk about religion in schools and how we shouldn't have religion in schools. We're not in a place where I want religion in schools. I don't, because how do you pick which one? I have a particular religious belief. Other people have a different particular religious belief. And if my kids were in public school, I would not want somebody with a different particular belief teaching them religion in a religious manner. I don't mind it being taught historically, but I don't want it being in the point of indoctrination. And so I don't want religion in schools. And guys, atheism is religion and evolution is one of its doctrines. Because that's what they're doing. They're teaching something as a matter of faith. You just believe it because they say so. The scientific clergy of atheism is preaching this. And it is not based on evidence. It is not based in science. It cannot be experimented on. There's no experiment you can do to show rocks to man evolution. There's no inferences that you can draw logically. They don't present any implications that you can draw those inferences from. And so since they don't have it, it's a matter of faith. And we're just supposed to accept it. They get to teach their religion, and we're not allowed to counter it with a different religious belief or even scientific evidence. I can't even predict. There's no scientific evidence that I'm allowed to present in a regular public classroom, because it would counteract the dogma of this regime. And so since they control the schools, since they control Clay County even more now, it's going to be hard to counter what is essentially lies. And so this is the state of our textbook. That's pretty much all I've got. Again, there was just a couple of things here that the textbook presents that's actually not in favor of what the textbook is trying to have the students conclude. It actually shows just the opposite. When you have a confused presentation like this, when you don't allow anybody to talk in a critical manner about it, if a student knows what they're talking about and they point this out during the classroom, which, I hope I have a lot of students that watch this and bring it up anyway to their teachers to point out the inconsistency, because that would be great. But it's going to get shut down. No, you believe what we tell you to believe. You answer on the test what we tell you to answer, and don't think for yourself. You just believe what we tell you to, because that's where they're at. Nobody's allowed to challenge it. You heard Addison Davis. The students are not allowed to bring it up. Teachers are not allowed to bring it up. Scientific evidence against evolution, stating that even the textbook is you're just causing problems. You're stirring the pot. You're not allowed to do that. Just accept it, and that's awful. So, my beautiful wife, everybody. So anyway, that's it for tonight. I hope you have gained something out of this, and as always, I appreciate any comments, any conversations that we can have in this thread, and above all, keep learning, guys.